today's epistle and gospel lessons, we realize that life has stumbling blocks, or the roadway gets rough. We're given two examples, one physical and one spiritual. Paul, in his second letter to the church in Corinth, just after his escape from Damascus in chapter 11, when boasting of weakness, the apostle didn't mind mentioning himself. But when boasting of visions and revelations of the Lord, he would not apply them directly to himself, but would rather speak of the experience impersonally, as having occurred to some man he knew. There are many other great experiences of which the apostle could boast, if he should desire to engage in this boasting. He would not be a fool in doing so. Anything he said would be truth, but he is not going to do it because he doesn't want anyone to think more highly of him than they find him to actually be. This whole section is the most accurate description of the life of a servant of Christ. It has its moments of deep humiliation, such as when on at Damascus. Then it has its mountaintop experiences, such as Paul's exhilarating revelation. But normally, after a servant of the Lord has enjoyed one of these experiences, the Lord allows him to suffer a thorn in the flesh. And that is what we have here. We learn many priceless lessons from this verse. First, it is proof that even divine revelations of the Lord do not correct the flesh in us. Even after the apostle had listened to the language of paradise, he still had the old nature and was in danger of falling into the snare of pride. What was Paul's thorn in the flesh? All we can say for sure is that it was a bodily trial which God allowed to come into his life. No doubt he didn't specify exactly what the thorn was, so that tried and tested saints down through the years might feel a close kinship with the apostle as they suffer. Paul describes it as a messenger of Satan to buffet him, to hinder Paul in the work of the Lord. But God is greater than Satan, and he used the thorn to further the work by keeping Paul humble. Successful service for Christ depends on a weak servant. The weaker he is, the more power of Christ accompanies his preaching. 3 times Paul asked God to remove this thorn, and God answered Paul's prayers, but not in the way Paul hoped for. God said in essence to Paul, I will not remove it, but I will do something better. I will give you grace to bear it. And remember, although I haven't given you what you asked for, I'm giving you what you need most deeply. You want my power and strength to accompany your preaching. But the way for you to have that happen is for you to be kept weak. God has said, my grace is sufficient for you. Paul was satisfied with the answer and responded, therefore most gladly I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. It is when we are conscious of our own weakness and nothingness that we depend on the power of God. And when we are thus cast on him in complete dependence, that his power is manifested to us, and we are truly strong. William Wilberforce, who led the fight to abolish slavery in the British Empire, was physically weak and frail, but he had a deep faith in God. Banwell said of him, I saw what seemed to me a shrimp become a whale. We've just seen a physical impediment, one which made the course rough or a rocky road. When we return to the gospel, we come across a spiritual impediment, a stumbling block, that of rejection. Jesus returned to Nazareth with the disciples. This was his own country, where he worked as a carpenter. On the Sabbath, he taught in the synagogue. The people were astounded. They couldn't deny the wisdom of his teaching or the wonder of his miracles. But there was a deep unwillingness to accept him as the Son of God. They thought of him as the carpenter, the son of Mary, whose brothers and sisters were still there. Had he returned to Nazareth a conquering hero, they might have accepted him more readily. But he came in lowly grace and humility. This offended them. The Nazarenes were a despised people. The popular attitude was, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Yet these social outcasts looked down on Jesus. The passage goes on to say he healed a few sick, but that was all. Their unbelief amazed him. Rather than fall to their criticism and unbelief, he decided to go out to the surrounding communities and send the disciples out 2 by 2, and all of them ministered, and many were healed. He sent them out with what in essence was the clothes on their backs, no money, no change of clothing, no food. They were to accept hospitality when it was given. He would supply their needs. And if they were rejected, they should leave town and stop the dust from their feet as they left, symbolizing God's rejection of those who reject his Son. Most of us have felt like Paul at some point in our lives. Asked God if he's given us a thorn, and we're happy when he answered no. We've all been in Jesus' position of being rejected by someone. I won't tell you to put on a happy face and go on. It hurts. It can be discouraging and demoralizing. Physical pain and mental pain are hard to deal with. I find that when it comes on me, prayer is the best recourse. The discomfort may or may not abate, but feeling his presence does much to comfort me. I've yet to run into anything like the agony that he suffered through on the cross. And that being so, I realize that my attitude has changed over the years. I see myself saying yes, but it could be so much worse. My place of comfort is in God's all-encompassing hands. To share it with you, I'll quote Bishop Mike in one of the first blessings he gave as a bishop. Go in safety, for you cannot go where God is not. Go in love, for love alone endures. Go in peace, for that is God's gift to those whose hearts and minds are in God's Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.